Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Merry Christmas. I just want to share some further thoughts on the Capricorn new moon because the last few days I've been reflecting a lot on these last days of 2024, and particularly when I heard about the transcendence or passing of Tom Jacobs, an astrologer who practiced evolutionary astrology, and is the author of several books, and one of his main focuses was Lilith. And so I've just been re-looking at things, but before I talk about what I've been re-looking at, I just want to say that um, I'm wishing Tom um, lots of love and peace in his journey on the other side. I never knew Tom personally. I had followed his work from time to time, and I found him to be an incredibly deep, authentic, and integral soul. And so when I found out that he left, I was, and still am, very, very sad. It's really impacted me, it, as though I actually knew him. It's hard to explain, but it's been on my mind non-stop from the moment I found out, which was just before Christmas. And so through processing, different thoughts that I've had about him and his work on Lilith and things of that nature, and re-looking at the new moon for the end of this year, I noticed that Lilith is on the south node. And I didn't speak to that in the reading of the new moon that I did several days ago. I focused on a lot of other energies that were happening around the new moon, such as the Pluto Mars opposition, several other things, and of course, the new moon conjunct Pallas Athena. But what I want to focus on today, as kind of like a part two, is the importance of the feminine archetype, and therefore also, well, I shouldn't say therefore, but the focus of relationships as being quite a big part of this story of the new moon as well. And this has come through just further reflection on the last few days, particularly because I've just been thinking about Tom pretty much every day. And so here's what I want to point to, and this, just may be helpful to some people. If you look at the position of the new moon, you can see it's 9 degrees and Pallas Athena is right there. The new moon is actually squaring the nodes. So it most absolutely brings in the matter of relationships, which I did touch on in the previous video. But today I'm going to also focus a little bit on Lilith, Pluto, Ceres, and Venus. And so just keep Pluto and Ceres out for a moment and just think about new moon actually is squaring Chiron. Now, I didn't speak about this in the previous video, but once again, upon further reflection, I've been feeling called to speak on this. So, if the new moon is square Chiron, which it is, and Lilith is conjunct the south node, which she is, that is the true position of Lilith, by the way. I always work with the true position. And if you look at Venus at 26 degrees of Aquarius, here's what happens. I'm going to take you to a section called midpoints. So this page here shows us all the various midpoint structures in this chart that we're looking at. Now, midpoints is a very important part of astrology, one that I don't hear many people talking about, but I've always worked with midpoints. Literally for the last 26 years, I've worked with midpoints, and I've seen how important they are, and how valuable and how telling they are. That is actual midpoints in your birth chart, as well as transiting midpoints as well. It's a very, very powerful tool to understand and to observe. And for the most part, you will not notice midpoints unless you have a really good mathematical eye and you're used to looking at charts in that way, which most people are not. And so in using Solarfire, this is a really handy little tool they have here, where they just basically, draw it all up for you. Okay. So what I want to show you is this. If you look at, we'll just go to Sun Chiron. Okay. So if you just look on the left-hand side, you'll see the column of the moon. Well, we can do this with Moon Chiron. It's the same thing, Sun Chiron or Moon Chiron. Of course, it's going to be the same thing because this is a new moon and the sun and moon are conjunct, right? That's what a new moon is. So if you look at the degrees of what is the midpoint of Moon Chiron or Sun Chiron or Sun Moon Chiron, what is the midpoint? In other words, let me just show you visually so that it can be more clear for those of you that are not familiar with the language or with what midpoints even are. So what we are looking at is there's the new moon and here is Chiron. Now, given Chiron is square this new moon, which it is, it's worthy of paying attention to what is the midpoint sitting in between the new moon and Chiron, and it's actually Venus. It's Venus is 3 degrees away from the exact midpoint, and I consider that to be close enough to draw Venus into this story. So, okay, before I go into the unpacking, there's just another midpoint I want to show you. And it had to do with Pluto being involved. Oops. Let me just need to delete that so I can move things. Where was it? Okay, Sun, Venus. Okay, here we go. So just to add to the story, look at the midpoint of Sun Venus or Moon Venus. Same thing again, because the sun and moon are conjunct each other. So what is the midpoint between the new moon and Venus? Well, it's actually Pluto. And Ceres is hanging around there as well. But the closest body is actually Pluto. So what we actually have then is we have this story that brings in a different piece of the puzzle to the picture of the new moon relative to or compared to what I spoke about several days ago with the new moon. And I think it's important to consider. And that is that the energy that's being amplified or focused on is Venus and the Chiron energy, Venus energy, and Pluto energy, and Lilith in the sign, in Venus's sign, right? In the sign of relationships, conjunct the South Node. So I think, it's obviously going to be different sort of descriptions for different people. It just depends on you and what's going on in your life story. And this can be in, your friendships, intimate relationships, and just simply relationships that you have with other people that need to be of equal footing. where you need to feel that you are equal in the partnership, Lilith in Libra, and that the space or the ability for true honesty to be present in this equal partnership. That's what Lilith on the South Node, actually squaring the new moon, would be highlighting. So there's some theme here around the need to be completely honest about what's fair and equal in all your relationships, really, and not being afraid to show that part of yourself that is what's important and what you need relative to a relationship being equal and fair, Libra, and feeling comfortable enough to express that side of yourself without the fear of being rejected, right? Or abandoned or cast out, which is what happened to Lilith. And so I think some of these themes will be like possibly old kind of templates in people's psyche. So old patterns of behavior in relationships, in other words, that are coming to the forefront here as something that needs to be addressed from this point on moving forward. And the Capricorn energy with Pallas Athena there, of course, which Pallas Athena gives us the wisdom. She gives us the ability to see clearly and apply the correct wisdom in our relationships, Lilith in Libra, square the new moon, so that we can address matters of being able to feel the balance, equality, and autonomy all at the same time, which might sound like a bit of a contradiction, but it's not. It can be, because when it comes to push and shove, push and pull, which is Aries Libra, when those polarities are not synchronizing and are just being projected, then the boxing gloves come out. And people automatically assume that it's Aries that's going to bring the boxing gloves out, but Libra can bring them out just as hard, if not harder, at times. The fact that Venus is at the midpoint of the new moon squaring Chiron, that too then brings to the picture that, well, Venus in Aquarius is many, many things, but one thing I think that it's highlighting in this story is the value of your own ability to be authentic. Just how valuable it is for you to be really authentic in your relationships. And if you're not able to be authentic, then you can't be yourself, right? So perhaps some of the fears around that might be because Chiron is squaring the moon. And Chiron, of course, is another archetype, very much like Lilith, which corresponds to the fear of abandonment or rejection. In the case of Lilith, it has very much to do with shame, being shamed for being real and raw and coming from your instincts, right? Lilith connects to, as Tom Jacobs coined, the wild feminine. So she's very much associated to, Lilith, of course, has all these other elements to her that can bring up abuse of power, control, possession, obsession, jealousy, all that sort of stuff in relationships. And Chiron, as I was saying, is another archetype that when that is an energy that's being emphasized, that too can correspond to deep fear of rejection. What's the fear of rejection here? It could be around the matters of being allowing yourself to be truly authentic and truly seen. So truly authentic, Venus in Aquarius, and truly seen, Lilith in Libra. Libra is the mirror, right? Any relationship or partnership is a mirror. And Lilith really brings up the raw truth of matters that often makes people uncomfortable. Also, as I said, the new moon relative to the midpoint of the new moon and Venus is actually Pluto. And Pluto and Venus are in the same sign. So that just brings in, another element again to do with partnerships, relationships, equality, because Aquarius is also a sign of equality, fairness, and justice. And Venus in Aquarius is going to be quite. It's very important for Venus in Aquarius to be appreciated for being different, for not conforming, for being able to think outside the box. She needs to be appreciated for being that exactly. So if she can't be that because she's feeling the Chiron square the moon, the rejection or non-acceptance of another, then that's Venus not being able to be authentically herself. And Pluto being at the midpoint of the new moon and Venus once again just brings in another element of relationship issues. In this case, I would say, actually, I was looking at Reinhold Erberton's book, which is a book that was written. I think he started writing it back in the 50s and 60s. It wasn't actually printed, I think, until 1972. So as a result, he doesn't have Chiron in the book. That's why I'm speaking to you about what years this book was written. An important point, because this whole book is about midpoints, right? And what do each midpoints speak to? Now, if you recall, or if you don't know this, Chiron was discovered in 1977. So he had no knowledge of Chiron, right? Thus, Chiron is not in the book. But let's see what he says about Sun, Venus, Pluto. Let me just find the page. Just bear with me. There we go. Sun, Venus, Pluto. He says strong excitability in love life can easily lead to excesses, a fateful love union. That's not as harsh as I thought, as what I kind of expected from him, because he's a guy from, I think he was born in the 40s in Germany. So he had a very, yeah, it was quite a black and white kind of view on things, but I still find his book incredibly valuable because some things he says just nails it on the head, right? But anyway, from his perspective, this is talking about and that would be referring to having that placement natally, but we can take these descriptions and apply them to transits as well, but we need to work with that relative to everything else in the chart and what we're actually looking at here. And in the context of everything we're looking at, we are looking at a new moon, which is a new beginning that we are setting in motion, as it were. Well, it's setting in motion anyway, and we can, choose to align with that consciously or not. If we choose to align with that consciously, then it's important to pay attention to these energies that are surrounding the new moon, which, in a nutshell, is speaking to very important relationship things that might come up during this lunation cycle. And ultimately, it is an opportunity to be really, really real, Capricorn, really realistic about our relationships and about which relationships we wish to continue to nurture, or which relationships we may wish to completely withdraw from, because we're growing in a different direction to where that relationship kept us at. And so it's just like, I see the Capricorn energy as like just a sober reminder of where you want to go in your life moving forward. Because we are, even with Lilith on the South Node, she's absolutely highlighting a lot of these core messages that we can see here with the new moon square Chiron, Venus at the midpoint of Sun Chiron, Pluto at the midpoint of Venus, Sun, Moon. Of course, Pluto always talks about it can be an intense love affair for certain individuals. This might be a lunation cycle that brings something like that in, or it may just be the ending of what could have potentially been that, right? It just depends on, again, each individual. But the symbols certainly do speak to being really clear and realistic about your path moving forward into 2025, what you want to sort of ground in your life around relationship matters, what you want to bring to the table and address and face and be honest about with yourself and with others, and what you essentially need to discard. Because whatever you do, you need to be able to be authentic, Venus in Aquarius, which is at the midpoint of the new moon in Chiron. And it's about overcoming the fear of not being accepted if you choose to be totally authentic and honest. Because let's face it, most people will act in a certain way, behave in a certain way, present in a certain way, primarily because they want to be accepted and not judged, which is understandable. No one likes to be judged. Everyone wants to be accepted. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when you go deeper, the problem is that what lies in that deeper space is a fear of an insecurity and a fear of not being liked and accepted. And if we just live our life based on that insecurity and that fear, we will never discover who we actually are and who we are becoming and who we want to be, because we are always going to be locked into or pulled in different directions because of the perceptions of others, expectations of others, and there's no there's 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 no room for you to discover who you are in all of that. The self-discovery journey, which includes all the different people you meet on your path and all the different experiences you have. That's why these people pop up and show up, to essentially show you what maybe you further need to work on, or what you are absolutely fucking done with. Right? So it's up to us to discern these differences. But the point of, our life and our journey of self-discovery is to have that discernment, to learn from what shows up every time. So those are my thoughts, closing thoughts, relative to this new moon. I just thought it was worth bringing these themes up because I didn't mention them, as I said in the previous video. And in addition, which I have touched on this, but relative to the context of all of this, we have Mars closing in very, very, very closely now to the opposition to Pluto, right? So Venus and the new moon having Pluto at the midpoint actually has the Mars-Pluto opposition at the midpoint. So that obviously can be really incredibly intense passion in some kind of love affair, but it can also be very explosive, opposing forces of will. Just literally the boxing gloves are out, or, people are just butting heads. So, that's there in the mix too. But ultimately, I think it just comes back to the one key thing, which is, well, it's a couple of things. It's how can I face the reality of what I want in my life realistically? How can I be integral and honest with that? Lilith in Libra. How can I be really authentic about that, Venus in Aquarius, without fearing losing somebody because they're not going to accept that part of me? And by the way, I just want to say on that note, this point about being authentic and not having expectations and not worrying about other people's perceptions and so forth, this is not about the attitude of stuff him, stuff her, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want kind of thing, right? I'm not talking about a self-absorbed, narcissistic, selfish kind of attitude, because that just comes from a place of ego and a place of insecurity and a place of wanting to sort of feel like you're in control. I think I said this in my previous new moon video right at the end, towards the end anyway. I said so, and I'm paraphrasing now, but it's relative to what I'm talking about now as well. It was something like, if you are if you are really secure within yourself, then you won't have a need to really control somebody else, to try to manipulate them and control them. You just simply will not have that need. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And all this was primarily inspired, actually, as I said, by the passing of Tom Jacobs, which has really, really touched me very, very deeply. And even though he's got his chart, publicly available on his website, I haven't looked at it from the point of view of, what was happening to his chart when he transcended, because, well, I just want to I want to give it some time and just kind of process what I'm feeling about this and why this has brought up, pretty intense grief for me, for somebody that I'd never met, but I have tremendous respect for. And so I didn't want to bring up his chart and start going, oh, well, this was transiting Saturn was here and transiting Lilith was there and blah, blah, blah. Just didn't want to do that. Some people tried to make some comments on my Facebook page about that, and I pretty much just ignored it. I think, just a bit of respect and a bit of space and a bit of time is called for. And I know most of you do understand that. Maybe down in the near future, I might bring up his chart and I might look at some things. I don't even know the details surrounding his situation, And somebody did approach me on Instagram and say to me that they knew Tom personally and that they were appreciative of my public post about him. And I was tempted to ask that person, could you please tell me what happened? But really I didn't want to make that person feel uncomfortable, because that person may have been really grieving at that time, So I'm just mindful and respectful of that. So anyway, wishing you all a happy calendar new year, which is just 2 days away. And I hope this information is helpful and you can relate to it in some way that is helpful. There are some challenging things about it for sure because of Chiron and Lilith, there's no question about that. But I think I'm really happy that Pallas Athena is there with the new moon, because She is, the ultimate goddess of wisdom. And we have an opportunity here to step into the new calendar year, because the true new year is on the 21st of March. But anyway, it is some type of new beginning that occurs at the end of 2024. And, we can consider it some type of new beginning just simply because there's a new moon, so that's a new beginning, right? And it's, we can just take that energy in a really positive way and make very wise decisions about all these relationship themes that for some people might be really intense right now. Or, people just need to make new choices and have new realizations and understanding. And that's what the goddess here gives us. She gives us with the clear seeing and the ability to have true wisdom. Yeah. Okay. I will see you all in the new year, sending you all much love. And take care. See you soon.